public consultation for the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, or BELA Bill, will resume this week. The BELA Bill seeks to make a host of changes to schools across the country, including but not limited to the starting age for children and to formalise home education and the financial administration of schools. Now, the bill was introduced to Parliament last year. However, the Democratic Alliance is concerned about this bill. It says the bill will endanger the quality of mother tongue education and lead to the erosion of the country's unique diversity. So to tell us more about the bill, we are joined virtually by DA Shadow Minister of Basic Education, Baxolile Nodada. Good to have you, Baxolile. Thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Good morning, Leanne, and good morning to all your viewers as well.
I know we were, I think we were meant to be joined by Elijah Mhlanga from the Education Department, but he not with us, so I'm glad that we do have you. I'm sure we'll talk to him at a later stage as well. So this Basic Education Amendment Bill, or the BELA Bill, is now in its final legislative stages, and the public hearing process are underway. From your perspective, what is it that you understand this bill is set to do, and why is it important that we get buy-in from the public and they participate in these submissions?
Look, Leanne, this bill basically is one of the big major legislative changes that we have in our education system coming since the dawn of our own democracy and adopting some of the laws on the South African Schools Act and the Employment of Educators Act. And there's some specific challenges and problems that we find in the BELA Bill. For example, the bill seeks to take away school governing body powers to determine their language and admission policies. But also, the bill seeks to centralize a lot of control in the hands of politicians and administrators in the different provincial education departments and the national department. The bill should not be centralizing power, but more decentralizing power to the communities and parents that knows what is best for their children. Because you're going to find a situation whereby an HOD determines what admission or language policy is being used in Tsolo, Mahlubini, where there's Xhosa-speaking people that seek to study in the language of their own understanding to advance the depth of knowledge for their own children. And somebody sitting in an office somewhere will make a determination as to what language is being used in that school, what admission policy is being used to that school. Even now, when we do oversight visits in schools, they complain about the centralization of power. They can't procure their own textbooks. They don't arrive on time for children. They can't procure their own maintenance equipment that they require. And schools are dilapidated and falling apart. So the bill seeks to centralize a lot of power into the hands of politicians. And then if you've got a problem with those decisions that they've made, you then have to appeal to the same people that made the decision, meaning that they are becoming a player and a referee in this instance. So there are other issues that were identified in the bill, such as home educators and homeschooling not being adequately consulted, and research being done on the choice that parents make for their children when they take them through home education, which sometimes may be because a child has got some sort of disability, can't concentrate in class, and there's various things that parents consider when they take their children to homeschool education. And I think that the department, in this instance, when they introduced this particular changes to the law, did not make thorough research. And when we request that thorough research, it is actually not there. Yeah. So we find these clauses problematic, and that is why we are saying that this BELA Bill is actually quite draconian, and it's going to take us back and polarize our schools, politicize our schools, and ultimately give control to politicians and administrators rather than parents and communities that know what is best for their children.
Obviously everything that you have said has been denied by the Basic Education Department, whether we talk to the draconian side of things. You say, and this is what you're putting out there, saying that the bill is sort of going to destroy languages. But what the department say in response to this is that this is not about destroying languages, but rather about creating a non-racial education system where every child will have access to all schools and not be excluded by race or gender or language or anything else. I mean, is this reason good enough for you?
Look, let's take the real facts on the table here, yeah, right? The reality of the situation is that this bill is not addressing the real issues in our education system. The reason why my parents will jump 4 or 5 schools from the village that I come from to go to a certain school is because the school that I am supposed to be attending is not of good quality. There's poor quality teaching, there's poor infrastructure, there's pit toilets where I can die in those pit toilets that we've seen recently. And ultimately, resources don't reach those particular areas. I can't even go to school for certain days because maybe I can't access the school because it's raining, the roads are bad, and so on. So parents choose what is best for their children. They want good quality education. And that's where the bills should be focusing. And it's not addressing any of these challenges. Now, when you make a determination to say, look, we want to make our schools coerced, definitely we want to make our schools coerced. And that's what we want. We are building a non-racial society. But more importantly, Leanne, we've got a constitution that protects the right for me to choose the language that I want to use in school so that I can got a depth of knowledge and depth of understanding. Look, I've recently came from a conference with 17 countries where the professor that deals with pearls and teams that we participate in to determine our level of numeracy in terms of literacy and other things that we test, the personal, professional, and knowledge development of our children in our country, said the problem with South Africa is that we don't have depth of knowledge because we don't study in the language of our own understanding. At grade 4, I need to now switch languages to English so I can have a good accent like I do today, but I don't have a depth of knowledge with my foundational education that I have studied in Xhosa. So it's very important to give the parents that choice and not take away that choice away from them to say, I want to take my child to a school in which they can study in their home language, they can study in their mother tongue, they can advance the depth and knowledge in education so that they can get good quality education. And that's what we should be promoting in our schools, to say, how do I make sure that I study in my Xhosa? You study in your English, you study in your Afrikaans, you study in your Chivenda, in accessing those schools, and not be limited because somebody's sitting in an office somewhere making a determination as to what language and admission is being used to school. This is no different to an apartheid government style that said you will study in Afrikaans. So we cannot go back to that. We need to give that power to the school, the parents, the communities that are there that knows what is best for their children, and they know the surroundings and the environment. Yeah. How can you go to the Northern Cape in Solplaatje and say to those people that, no, you will now study in English, yet their entire life, the entire education system, how they best understand things, maybe in Afrikaans. How do you go to Limpopo, in Polokwane or Tzaneen, where they need to study in their own particular language, and the parents in that particular community have chosen that this is the language of instruction that we need to study in, and then you come and make a determination as a department without even knowing the surroundings of those particular areas. Yeah. And that is what the law is basically saying. And it says that if, for example, you've got a problem with the determination that has been made by the department, you appeal to the same people. Now, the last thing I want to say is that if there's any school, anywhere, that uses language and admissions to exclude learners, that is where the department in law should intervene, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where people are using language and admission to exclude certain learners. And the law allows for that intervention to be made so that the children are not excluded because they don't speak a certain language in a particular school. So there's only 1,200 schools that have single medium instruction across the country of the 24,000. And I'm sure that we can be able to build capacity to ensure that I can study in my own language in any school that I want to go to.
A lot has been said about Afrikaans schools as well. And I mean, there is, some schools of thought saying that Afrikaans is used to exclude a lot of black pupils. Do you agree with the school of thought, or do you think that this is not what is happening at certain schools?
Look, Leanne, what we can never do is to say that that is not happening. You know, that would be a miss of us saying that. But let's look at the real facts here. There's only 1,200 single medium schools in the entire country. The country has 24,000 public schools, right? And it cannot be that we use the 1,200 single medium schools in the entire country to scapegoat and say these particular schools are excluding learners, because it's not happening at that scale and that rate, yeah. The problem that we have here, and we need to be honest as a country and not be soft on our own government, that we are not building good quality schools in our own communities to make sure that we've got access to libraries, labs, good teachers, solid infrastructure. We've got environments that are conducive to learning so that I don't die in a pit toilet And that is why my parents won't take me to the school that is closest to my community and rather seek a better school 4, 5, 6, 10 kilometers away so that I can go and get a good education.
Yeah.
The bill should be addressing the real issues in our basic education system so that parents, communities, and children can study best, closest to home, in a good quality school they need to access. Now, there are certain instances where schools exclude learners based on admission or language. And that is why the HOD and the MEC in the current law, South African Schools Act and the Employment of Educators Act, can then access, you can access an appeal through them to go and complain about that particular school. It can be investigated, they can intervene. But it is a small number of cases in the broader scheme of things on what the bigger problem is in our education system. And that's what we need to be honest about and say, how do we best fix that to make sure that we provide good quality schools and good education for all our children.
So those are sticking points. I mean, some of the other things that are coming up, and very quickly, because I know we're going into less than a minute if you can do this. I mean, other things that are proposed is selling alcohol on school premises after school hours. Also, you could get a fine or actual jail time if a parent does not send their kids to school. And also now making grade R compulsory. I mean, are there things that you are in favor of?
Yeah, so Leanne, we do support grade R being compulsory. The only concern that we have is the Treasury has informed us that there's no funding to provide to make grade R compulsory. As you may know, we've got infrastructure challenges in school, lack of teacher supplies in school and money for that. So that needs to be make sure that we've got that in order so that we can realize that particular law. Secondly, we don't support a situation whereby there's such other laws in terms of alcohol and creating an environment whereby Home Affairs responsibility for undocumented learners is taken on board. That responsibility should remain with Home Affairs. We don't have the resources to be able to do that. So there's some elements of the bill that are assistive, Leanne, but the vast majority of the bill is actually not addressing the real problems in our education system. And that's where we've got a massive, massive problem. And we need to be able to change things for the better in our schools to build quality education, infrastructure, good quality teaching, and ultimately address the big dropout issues. And that's where the law should be going at this point in time and not scapegoating a small number of schools.
All right, let's leave it there. I know that this resumes this week, so the hearing's into it, so we certainly will be following that. Thanks very much for talking to us here on the program. That, of course, is the DA Shadow Minister of Basic Education, Baxolile Nodada, speaking to us about this public consultation process for the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. That's the BELA Bill, which resumes this week.